Hello, and welcome to LeanReads, the channel that turns powerful books into simple lessons for growth and inspiration. In every generation, there are thinkers who don't just describe the world, they reshape it. Lee Kuan Yew was one of them. From a small island with no natural resources, he built a nation that became a global model of discipline, vision, and pragmatism. But his insights reach far beyond Singapore. They reveal how power truly works between East and West, between vision and survival. Today, we revisit his timeless lessons on leadership, destiny, and the shifting balance of our world. If you'd like to read the full book, the link is waiting for you in the description. Now, let's jump. Lee Kuan Yew, 2013, offers profound analyses of the world's shifting power dynamics, from the rise of China and the enduring influence of the United States to the evolving challenges of globalization and leadership in the 21st century. Drawing from over 50 years of experience at the crossroads between East and West, Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father and first Prime Minister of Singapore, shares his unparalleled understanding of how civilizations think, operate, and evolve. Through extensive dialogues with global leaders and scholars, this book provides a strategic framework for interpreting the modern world, exploring questions of power, culture, and governance in an age defined by transformation and interdependence. Lee Kuan Yew, 1923-2015, was the founding Prime Minister of Singapore. Serving from 1959 to 1990, he transformed a poor, resource-scarce island into one of the world's most prosperous and efficient nations. His other seminal works include From Third World to First and Hard Truths to Keep Singapore Going. Graham Allison is a professor of government at Harvard University, renowned for his Thucydides' trap theory on U.S.-China relations, and author of the bestseller Destined for War. Robert D. Blackwell, former U.S. Ambassador to India and Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, is one of America's most respected foreign policy thinkers. Ali Wine, an international relations specialist at Rand Corporation and the Atlantic Council, focuses on U.S.-China strategic competition and the future of global order. In a world where great powers are reconfiguring and civilizations are competing for influence, most analyses focus on numbers, GDP growth, military strength, or technological advancement. Yet, Lee Kuan Yew invites us to see beyond the data. From his unique vantage point, standing between East and West, between tradition and modernity, he reveals the deep cultural and psychological currents that drive nations to rise or fall. The book distills insights from a lifetime of nation building and global diplomacy. Lee's perspective is neither purely Eastern nor Western. It is pragmatic, strategic, and deeply human. He sees civilization as a living system where competition and cooperation coexist, and where leadership, culture, and foresight are the real determinants of success. As he once said, "I always tried to be practical. I look at the facts, I look at the reality, and I ask, what is possible?" This is not a book of ideology. It's a guide to thinking strategically in a complex, uncertain world. The rise of China, why its return to global prominence is reshaping the 21st century order. The resilience of America, why the U.S. retains long-term advantages in innovation, education, and openness. India's challenge, how democracy and diversity shape and sometimes slow, its rise. The Asian century, what it means for global trade, security, and cultural influence, leadership and vision. Why the true measure of a nation's strength lies in its ability to adapt, not its size or resources. Lee Kuan Yew's insights are drawn not from theory, but from practice, from transforming Singapore into a global hub and advising world leaders for decades. He stood at the intersection of empires, observing both Western efficiency and Eastern discipline, and teaching the world that progress is not about choosing one side. It's about balancing both. In an era of polarization, Lee Kuan Yew remains a voice of reason, reminding us that leadership begins with clarity of thought. According to Lee Kuan Yew, who spent decades closely observing and engaging directly with China's top leadership, the rise of China is not merely a matter of economic growth or military expansion. It represents the return of an ancient civilization to what it perceives as its natural position in the global order after centuries of weakness and marginalization. China makes no secret of its ambition to become a leading world power. With more than 1.3 billion people and a history stretching back over 4,000 years, the Chinese see this resurgence not as aggression, but as restoration. A senior Chinese official once told a Singaporean diplomat that any action harming China's national dignity would inevitably provoke consequences, a clear message that the country will no longer remain sidelined in global affairs. From Lee's perspective, China's ascent has been strategic, deliberate, and patient. Rather than confronting existing powers, such as the United States head on, Beijing has expanded its influence through trade, investment, and economic partnerships. Over the past 3 decades, this strategy has been defined by internal consolidation, careful diplomacy, and a focus on long-term advantage. China's leaders understand that they require a prolonged period of peace and stability to complete their transformation. They study history meticulously, drawing lessons from nations like Germany and Japan, whose premature confrontations with the established order led to devastating consequences. Yet, China's rise is not without its internal challenges. Its model of centralized control and strong administrative unity has allowed rapid execution of massive infrastructure projects, but that same system sometimes hampers creativity and innovation, the very qualities needed to compete globally in the digital age. Cultural and linguistic barriers also limit China's ability to attract international talent. Despite efforts to ease residency policies and invite foreign expertise, deep social integration remains difficult. The tension between discipline and flexibility continues to shape China's modernization journey. Culturally, values such as hierarchy, order, and bureaucratic precision. The rapid rise of China has prompted searching questions about the role of the United States in a world undergoing profound transformation. As the global balance of power gradually tilts eastward, many have begun to wonder whether America is entering a period of relative decline. Mounting internal divisions, from political polarization to growing public debt, have led some observers to question whether the United States can sustain its global leadership over the long term. However, viewing America solely through the lens of decline would be a mistake. If history has shown anything, it is that the United States possesses an extraordinary capacity for reinvention an ability to adapt and rebound in times of crisis unlike any other major power. Throughout modern history, America's instinct has not been retreat, but renewal. When faced with adversity, it tends to innovate. In the 1980s, when Japan appeared poised to surpass the US as the world's economic leader, America responded not with fear, but with innovation, leading the digital revolution that reshaped global industry, finance, and communication. This resilience springs from a deeply rooted cultural trait, the spirit of pioneering optimism. Americans believe that with enough creativity and determination, almost anything is possible. Failure is not seen as final, but as a stepping stone toward eventual success. Within its entrepreneurial ecosystem, this attitude has produced an unparalleled environment for experimentation, risk taking, and continuous learning, the hallmarks of American renewal. Yet, this dynamism is not without constraints. Analysts have pointed out that the U.S. political system now struggles to formulate and implement long term strategies. In an era of hyper partisan politics, decision making often bends to short term electoral calculations. As a result, issues such as fiscal reform, infrastructure renewal, and healthcare sustainability have lingered across administrations without decisive resolution. If left unchecked, this short termism could undermine America's ability to think and act strategically on the world stage. In the Asia Pacific, U.S. allies occasionally express uncertainty about the consistency of Washington. Amid the complex and evolving relationship between the United States and China, another Asian giant quietly advances its own path. India, with its vast population and robust democratic framework, India stands as a striking contrast to China. While China's rise has been driven by centralized control and rapid execution, India's progress is slower, shaped by consensus building and pluralism across its diverse linguistic, cultural, and religious landscape. When Lee Kuan Yew first visited India in 1959, he saw immense promise under Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, a charismatic leader and visionary thinker, and backed by a strong legal administrative foundation inherited from the British. India seemed poised to become a global power. Yet over the decades, that promise gave way to frustration. The state driven economic model and cumbersome bureaucracy led India to miss crucial moments of opportunity, while China capitalized on globalization to accelerate industrialization. India spent decades trapped in regulatory stagnation, the so called license raj. Much of this stems from the complexities of democracy itself. In contrast to China's capacity for rapid top down execution, every major policy shift in India must pass through layers of negotiation and compromise. Language diversity illustrates this complexity vividly. In Delhi, one might communicate with 200 million people in English, 250 million in Hindi, and 80 million in Tamil. Yet these are but fragments of a country with hundreds of linguistic communities. In contrast, more than 90% of China's population shares a single written language, granting it immense administrative coherence. Still, India's pluralistic democracy and rule of law may ultimately prove to be its long term strength. While its democratic processes slow decision making, they also foster resilience and social legitimacy, a foundation that can endure political transitions and global shocks. Over time, this flexibility may enable India to develop a more sustainable growth model than highly centralized systems. Infrastructure development offers a clear example. In China, an entire neighborhood can be relocated within months to build a new expressway. Beyond the competition for power among great nations like China and India, each expanding its influence through economic strength and grand development initiatives, the modern world faces a new spectrum of non-traditional security threats. These dangers transcend national borders and cannot be contained by conventional military means. This reality is forcing the international community to rethink how nations cooperate and respond in an era of deep interconnection and mutual dependence. According to Lee Kuan Yew, one of the most pressing dangers of our time is religious extremism. Unlike the interstate conflicts of the past century, today's threats operate through non-state networks that can spread across continents. An act of violence in one country can trigger unrest or imitation thousands of miles away. The cross-border, decentralized nature of these movements makes them uniquely difficult to contain. No single nation can manage such challenges in isolation. Lee warned that this danger grows even more severe when extremism intersects with the proliferation of nuclear technology, especially in politically volatile regions such as the Middle East. He often cited Iran's nuclear ambitions as a textbook example of this convergence. If Iran were to acquire nuclear weapons, he argued, it could set off a regional chain reaction, prompting countries like Saudi Arabia or Egypt to pursue their own programs, potentially igniting a nuclear arms race. Security experts fear that, in such an unstable environment, if these strategic weapons ever fell into the hands of non-state actors, the consequences would defy all conventional risk models. Beyond the threat of violence, Lee also highlighted the fragility of the modern world that comes with its heavy reliance on interconnected systems. The very networks that drive prosperity, global finance, food supply chains, and information technology have become points of vulnerability. A minor disruption in one part of the world can cascade into systemic crises elsewhere within days or even hours. The 2008 global financial crisis exposed this reality. A local shock could paralyze economies worldwide, revealing how deeply entangled and defenseless the global system had become. Climate change, in Lee's assessment, represents another existential challenge to global security. In an era defined by global complexity, from climate change to technological revolutions, leadership has emerged as the single most decisive factor determining whether a nation succeeds or fails. While resources, strategy, and technology all matter, it is ultimately the vision, judgment, and resolve of leaders that shape a country's destiny. One defining quality of effective leadership is the courage to defy consensus. Great leaders often make decisions that are unpopular in the short term, yet essential for long-term success. Singapore's remarkable transformation under Lee Kuan Yew exemplifies this. His decisions were never aimed at pleasing public sentiment, but at laying the structural foundations for future prosperity. He governed with the conviction that results, not rhetoric, would justify his course. This stands in contrast to many modern democracies, where leaders are often constrained by public opinion polls, short electoral cycles, and the fear of political backlash. The governance of a nation demands not only democratic oversight, but also decisive action in moments of urgency. Crises such as environmental degradation, pandemics, and disruptive technologies cannot be solved within a 4-year term. Hence, true leaders must build social consensus for long-term policies while maintaining legitimacy within democratic systems. Balancing decisiveness with accountability is the art that separates leadership from mere politics. Modern leadership, Lee argued, requires a balance between pragmatism and principle, avoiding both extremes of rigid ideology and populist impulsiveness. A good leader understands that context matters. No single model fits all societies. Lee Kuan Yew refused to apply imported political theories mechanically. Instead, he governed with flexibility, choosing what worked for Singapore's unique circumstances. He allowed outcomes, not slogans, to speak for his success. Another hallmark of enduring leadership is the ability to balance short-term pressures with long-term vision. In an age of relentless media scrutiny and instantaneous public reaction, maintaining focus on distant goals is harder than ever, and therefore more valuable than ever. A true statesman must withstand criticism, remain grounded in reality, and stay committed to a coherent direction, even when the winds of public opinion shift daily. It is through these qualities, resilience, realism, and a forward-looking will, that leaders can guide societies through the turbulence of globalization. The future will not through the combined perspectives of Lee Kuan Yew, Graham Allison, Robert D. Blackwell, and Ali Wine. Readers are invited on a profound exploration of the shifting global order, where influence steadily moves from west to east. Beneath the surface of economic figures and military power lies a deeper story of culture, governance, and strategic foresight shaping the modern world. Each chapter reflects decades of high-level observation, dialogue, and policy experience. Standing at the crossroads of East and West, Lee Kuan Yew offered unparalleled insight into how civilizations think, act, and evolve. From China's deliberate, patient resurgence to America's adaptive resilience and India's democratic experiment, the book portrays a world defined not only by competition, but by coexistence and learning. Meanwhile, transnational challenges, extremism, climate change, technological disruption are reshaping what security and progress mean in the 21st century. In such a world, leadership is destiny. Nations that cultivate foresight, discipline, and unity will thrive amid volatility. Those that chase popularity or abandon long-term thinking risk fading into irrelevance. As Lee Kuan Yew's life and legacy remind us, the true measure of leadership lies not in the comfort of consensus, but in the courage to act for the generations yet to come. Reading Lee Kuan Yew, the Grand Master's insights is like sitting in the presence of a mind that has seen the world from both the ground and the summit, a man who not only studied history, but helped shape it. This book is more than a record of political ideas. It is a meditation on how civilizations rise, how power shifts, and what kind of thinking is required to lead in an age of constant transformation. What struck me most was the clarity and honesty of Lee Kuan Yew's worldview. He never romanticized democracy, capitalism, or ideology. Instead, he approached leadership as an engineer approaches a bridge, asking, "Will it hold?" His thoughts on China's disciplined resurgence, America's unique capacity for reinvention, and India's slow but steady democratic evolution reveal not just an understanding of nations, but of human nature itself. He saw that prosperity begins in the mind, in the discipline of leaders, the integrity of institutions, and the realism of the people who build them. What makes this book timeless is its balance between pragmatism and principle. Lee Kuan Yew was not a dreamer detached from reality.